Steve wanted to lose his virginity, but he demanded to see the other person's medical records to ensure there were no sexually transmitted diseases. After the other person produced them, Steve discovered that she had a record of breast augmentation. The woman had no choice but to remove the silicone. It turned out that one day earlier, these 4 women expressed a desire to sleep with any man. This made Steve very excited. Then they knelt down to let the women choose. The woman who was drinking directly chose Barry. The reason was surprisingly that she had never slept with someone with an intellectual disability. Snort happily exclaimed that he could finally touch breasts. The woman said they would get more. They were going to take Snort and the others upstairs.
Drunk, sloppy sex.
I'm just a baby!
Barry ran away. Longshan hit the woman next to him and also ran away. Snort said he had a stomachache and also ran away. Steve mocked them as cowards. Just as Steve was about to take the woman upstairs, Ms. Carmen appeared. This made Steve fall in love at first sight. Then he pushed away the woman beside him. Then they arranged to meet at a bar. Unexpectedly, Steve was so direct. He expressed that he wanted to offer his virginity to Carmen. Unexpectedly, Carmen was also open to it. Then they went upstairs to prepare for sex. Unexpectedly, Steve directly took out his medical records and demanded that Carmen produce hers as well. Carmen was very angry. Unexpectedly, in order to have Steve's first time, she actually brought her medical records, but Steve discovered that she had a record of breast augmentation. He stated that he only has sex with natural breasts. The next day, Carmen had the silicone removed from her breasts. Steve was finally going to be with Carmen, but the house collapsed. Steve was in despair because Carmen was crushed to death by Haley. People around thought that if the silicone were still there, Carmen definitely wouldn't have died. Just because Stan's job could be done by an idiot, the director really hired an idiot to replace Stan.
Gary, stop rubbing the stapler on your pants.
After that, Stan had to find a new job, but the information that Stan had worked at the CIA was confidential, so Stan had no work experience at all. Stan stated that he had worked at the CIA for 20 years. Then the interviewer was shot dead.
Hi, Stan. You gotta stop telling people, Stan.
Coincidentally, the supermarket where Steve worked a summer job needed people, so Stan went to work at the supermarket. Unexpectedly, at this time, Steve was promoted. Stan thought this was too bizarre. Then he complained to a passerby that he had worked at the CIA. Next, the passerby died.
You really gotta put a sock in it, Stan.
The promoted Steve started constantly ordering Stan around. At this point, the boss told Steve to teach Stan how to arrange the butter. Then Steve taught Stan how to arrange the butter in the warehouse, but Stan placed one butter upside down. Steve directly knocked over all the butter, making Stan start over. When he got home, Stan decided to get back at Steve. He smashed a box of light bulbs and then made Steve take off his shoes and clean up. Steve said he would find a way to get Stan fired, so that Stan would have no money to support Francine.
How will you keep her glowing in such finery?
The next day, the regional manager came to inspect. Unexpectedly, the floor was covered with butter. Stan said that this was all taught by Steve. At that moment, a woman pushing a stroller passed by, but she slipped and fell. The child's stroller kept drifting and crashing. Finally, it crashed into the chili sauce. Then the chili sauce caught fire. The child's stroller exploded. Then Steve was fired. Steve handed over his apron and left. Unexpectedly, all these things would be recorded in his file. Stan was scared. He deeply regretted doing all this. The man simply opened a can, only to release a demon. The demon rushed directly into his son's room, and even kidnapped him. The man was utterly shocked. The demon stated that he needed to see the man's father, or Steve would be killed. Stan had no choice but to visit his father in prison. He demanded that Jack take Steve's place. After some thought, Jack finally agreed, but Stan had forgotten that his father was a scoundrel. Once Jack got the keys, he immediately knocked Stan out, and drove away in Stan's car. Meanwhile, the demon had taken Steve to his fortress. At first, Steve acted arrogantly, but he was quickly subdued after a beating. In despair, Stan turned to Roger for help. Roger suggested seeking help from Santa Claus, even though they had a history of conflict. Nevertheless, to rescue Steve, they set out for the North Pole. Upon arrival, Stan was captured by elves, and both he and Roger were taken to Santa's village. When Santa appeared, he assumed Stan had come to provoke him, and even intended to kill him, until Stan uttered the demon's name. To defeat Krampus, the two formed an alliance. Unexpectedly, the creatures in Krampus's castle were quite friendly, and Krampus himself turned out to be good-natured. They decided to take Steve to get to the truth. Krampus was in the middle of singing. It turned out that he hit children only to teach them to be kind. Steve finally understood everything, but he still didn't grasp why Jack specifically had to replace him. As it turned out, long ago, Krampus had been able to make Jack behave, but he was accidentally sealed away before he could finish the task. By then, Santa and Stan had already reached Krampus's castle. They began mercilessly slaughtering the creatures inside, leaving none alive. Krampus immediately fled with Steve, but the furniture that stayed behind to cover their escape was completely destroyed.